Good morning and welcome to the fourth in our series on how to give amazing conference speeches. Today, we're going to catch up with a really important topic around creating visuals. And, this is one of the most important things that we can do with an audience is because we want to catch people's attention. People have very short attention spans. It's not always easy for them to really to hear and to understand what we're saying. So what exactly do we mean by visual communication? Let's get straight into the topic today. As you can see on the cover slide, we have this idea of being unforgettable. So when we're giving a conference speech, we're really trying to create that sense of impact and memorable moments. And there's many ways that we can do that. But ultimately it's about moving from the logic and the intellect into emotional impact. And you can do that in a visual way. Visuals are and stories and word pictures are a very, very powerful way to get through the intellect and to tap into that sense of emotion. Because ultimately, people are sold on their emotions and they rationalize and justify through logic. So this is what we're trying to do here: transform your presentations from data dumps into compelling narratives. And that's something we should always be trying to do: is tell a story behind the slides. A little catch up here on the journey that we've been on so far. We started with why, so really understanding what's our purpose, sort of really capturing the idea, an inspirational, a forward, future looking presentation. We talked about stories, how we can use stories to tell the story behind the data. We talked about hooks and taglines, finding common ground. Ultimately, a conference speech, you're from the stage, you're distant from your audience, is one to many, but how do you find that common ground so you take people along on that journey with you? And today we're going to have a look at the visuals. How do we create messages, ideas that stick with your audience? We're going to be talking about, stories and energies and metaphors. And, this is a really important area to think about, just adding a bit of spice into your conference speech. Ultimately, the only way to create a memorable, story or message or visual is to have a clear message. If you don't have a clear message, how are you going to choose a story? If you don't have a clear message, what is the visual that you're going to pair with that particular message? So ultimately, it's about thinking about, the end in mind. What do you want your audience to think, feel, and do on the journey of your talk, but also on every single slide? What is that journey? And we call these taglines. What is that very concise message that you'd like to get across in this particular slide? And we talk about the 16 or sometimes 32 word message, and then ultimately getting it down to an 8 and a 4 word message. So you can see even on this slide today, produce your message with crystal clarity. 6 words, easy to remember. And this is why we can deliver speeches without notes, because these messages are super easy to remember. And they're also therefore easy for the audience to understand. So in the example at the bottom, you can take a long example like our comprehensive sustainability initiative encompasses multiple environmental impact reduction strategies across all operational sectors. That's a bit of a mouthful. That's quite challenging to convey that idea. But when you put that into a tagline, then this program reduces environmental impact in every department. So the key message there: reduce environmental impact in every department. So those sort of 8 or 6 words that you can use. So when you have an idea, reduce environmental impact in every department, now you can think about a visual. What visual would you like to have to represent in every department, right? Maybe it's an org chart. Maybe it's sort of like a little picture collage of sort of every snapshots of different parts of the business. Reducing environmental impact. What kind of visuals could you use? Arrows down, X's, reductions, big picture, small picture, before and after. There's many different visuals that you can use. Think of infographics, for example, to convey that message. But ultimately, it's the message first and then the visual. So reduce environmental impact in every department, pair a message with that. Deliver with style. Again, when we're delivering these messages, these visuals, it's not only the visual on the slide, it's like you are a visual on the stage. You are trying to connect ultimately with the audience. If you don't have eye contact with the audience, you're going to lose their attention. Even in a big room, it's very difficult to do so. But you've got to be looking, you've got to be engaging, you've got to be making visual contact with each of those audience members as much as you can. So remember, visual communication, it's not just your audience looking at your slides, but it's you looking at the audience looking at you. That connection is so important. So you want to try and get that magnetic connection between you and the audience. If you're on a big stage, how are you going to move around, move forward, move left, move right? We talked about this before, kind of set your stage, beginning, middle, and end. Maybe, for example, if I move to the left of the stage to talk about reducing environmental impact, perhaps later on in my talk, when I also come back to that point, I move back to that part of the stage. My visual movement around the stage is very important too. So that connects dots for the audience. So again, your your positioning, your body language is incredibly important. Clearly, the way that you deliver these messages is going to be important too. So when you deliver reduce environmental impact, where are you going to put the emphasis? Is it on reduce? Is it on reduce environmental impact? Is it on in every department? Where do you want to place that emphasis? Because where you put the emphasis will also be telling the audience the important part of the message. So slides support you, but also you're working in harmony. It's just another way of connecting. The slides don't stand on their own. They're working with you, just another tool that you have when you're trying to connect with your audience. A conference speech is an event. It's an experience. You want to create that emotional experience for the audience. What is that energy? What is that emotion? What's that experience that you'd like your audience to go on in this particular talk? So is it quiet confidence? For data, if you're running through data, you don't want to be bouncing off the ceiling. You want to be going through the numbers. If it's an important point, something serious, you lower your volume, and that can sort of bring the audience in. If you're looking for a more inspirational, more vision casting, your energy needs to be up. It needs to be a 7, an 8 out of 10. You need to be showing the audience you believe in the message first. So your message and your energy must be aligned. So it doesn't matter how good your slides are. If the energy that you're using to deliver the talk is not aligned to that, it's going to be out of sync. It's not really going to land for the audience. One of the ways that you can do this, learning a lesson from Jack Ma, is like speaking plain words, speaking in a language that everybody can not only understand. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's like if you make your audience work hard to think about what's going on, you're asking them to spend energy. And the more energy they're spending trying to work out your message, then they're not enjoying things as much. Now, sure, you might be sort of that type of speaker where you really want to challenge your audience, fine. But for most speakers, most business speakers, you want to really show, not tell. You want to demonstrate. You want to make it easy for the audience. You want to unfold the message throughout the presentation. So you really want to be, performing for the audience so that they can absorb that message. Why? Because the easier that you make it for the audience, the more likely they can have that message going in. There's less resistance, there's less friction, there's less barriers. You can try this. There's a micro drill there on the slide. Record your 30-second message. So maybe you have a slide, you want to record a 30-second message. Try it at 3 different energy levels. Low, slow, serious. Does that work? Just maybe at your normal speaking voice, right? Just as you would if you were in a small meeting. How does that come across? And then sort of bring it up a notch to sort of conference, high energy, contagious, energetic level. Which one works for the message? Of course, you want variety. Not everything needs to be a 9 out of 10. Not everything should be a 2 or 3 out of 10. It's that variety. Again, this is a performance. You may like it or not, but if you want to have a successful conference speech, you've got to be performing. Of course, you've got to be enjoying it. It's a performance you should enjoy, but it's also something the audience will enjoy as well. A really important idea here about metaphors, I love metaphors and word pictures and sort of like being able to see. This is why stories are so powerful. Stories are word pictures. They're narratives that we create in our heads. When you read a book, if I read the same book, we're just going to see it in a different way. We're going to imagine the characters in different ways. We're going to imagine the feelings in slightly different ways. That's the wonderful, enduring nature of a story. So we can break this down into word pictures and metaphors. So making the abstract concrete with a metaphor. Here's a quotation from Jack Ma, and this is going back to when Alibaba was competing with eBay. And at the time, eBay was the giant. Alibaba was the small, upstart. So if eBay is a shark in the ocean, Alibaba is a crocodile in the Yangtze River. So in other words, we're in the river, we're small, we're hidden, we're underwater, people can't see us yet, but we're strong, we're powerful, we're going to grow. eBay sort of has the Rome of the ocean right now. So this is an idea of, conveying that idea of being an underdog, competitiveness, sustainability. There's, so many ideas wrapped into this metaphor, but, speaking from the stage to 1,000 people, people get it. They understand, yeah, we're not like eBay. We're not as strong or as powerful or as big as eBay yet, but look at our strengths. We maybe we can dominate the Yangtze River first and then grow from there. And that's exactly what they did. So how can you turn, a technical feature, an idea, a concept into a metaphor that the audience can understand? Now, again, you may not know where the Yangtze River is, but Jack Ma was delivering this to his colleagues in China. Yangtze River is one of the major rivers running through China. Of course, everybody knows the Yangtze River as much as you know the Thames if you live in London. So using word pictures and metaphors. Example here on the right-hand side, comparisons work really well. The camel versus the horse. So you say, well, which animal is most impressive? And maybe you make a case for the horse. The horse can run faster than the camel. The horse is, mane flowing back. It's powerful. It's vibrant. It's energetic. Right. So in a certain environment, you say, wow, the people, love horse racing and sort of like, horse breeding is such a high end, prestigious, horse, polo and all this sort of stuff on horses. There's a great mystique built up around horses. But what if you're in the desert? What if your environment is tough and there's no water and you've got to go through that desert for miles and miles and miles for days and days and days? The horse is not going to last, but the camel will. So maybe we need to be resilient like the camel because we're going through the desert right now. And then when we come out the other side, we can hook up with those horses and ride off. So again, using these ideas of word pictures to describe, maybe you competing, using a strategy, all those sorts of ideas are really powerful. If you could explain this to a 10-year-old child and they can more or less get the idea, oh yeah, the camel's good over here, the horse is good over here, they understand it, then that's a powerful metaphor. Metaphors are word pictures that people remember. If you gave that speech, you wouldn't be surprised if, several months or even years down the line, sometimes people come up to me and say, oh, I remember you had that idea about this. So come up with the metaphors, build up your story bank for your particular subject matter expertise. If you're in finance, build up good finance metaphors. If you're in data analysis, build up good data analysis metaphors. If you're not sure, ask me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to help you with that. Again, just a quick note on slide design. I think keep it simple is really the ultimate metaphor here. We've got great tools now to design slides. We don't have to pack in all the text and charts onto slides. One chart, one point. That's the way to deliver a conference speech. Now, sometimes people from consulting companies will say, well, look, we have our company culture. We've got to present all our data on slides. Okay, well, if that's the way you do it, that's the way you do it. But we're talking about conference presentations here. One chart, one point. Don't confuse people. Keep it simple. Keep it clear. Have that choice. Put a big arrow. Let people know this is what you should be looking at. Tagline it. This is the message. This is what you should be looking at. Don't let people guess what they should be interpreting from the chart or the data or whatever it is you're trying to convey. Another example that you can use is the black screen. So when you've finished presenting a slide, if your clicker allows it, you can black out the screen on the clicker. If you don't want to use that, then you can just put black screens in between your slides. I know conference speakers that do that. So they have a slide, They'll tell a story, they'll go to black, maybe they'll elaborate on the story, maybe they'll do an exercise with the audience, ask a question to the audience, have the audience talk to each other, and then when they're ready to put the visuals back on, then they'll go to the next slide. So you don't have to have the visuals on all the time. You can go to black, and then the audience start looking at you. They start looking at the slides, and then their attention comes back to you. So one idea per slide. Keep those font size nice and big so everybody, particularly those at the back, can read it. On video, if you're recording it, you want it to be to be visible. And people have got very short attention spans, and if they've got to really try and work something out, they're going to give up. Maybe they'll just listen to you, and if you've got a good message, that's good enough. But if you're there listening and seeing, that's going to be much more memorable, isn't it? Those two together is really going to increase that memorability. Again, remember, we're using visuals to add impact to our message so we can be unforgettable. That's really what we're trying to do here. So here's our checklist. Again, we've got to start with the message, get that tagline down. What do I want to say on this slide? What is that big idea? 4 to 8 word tagline. I've got my tagline now. Should I use a story, a picture, a data point, a chart? What is it? And metaphor. What is that actually going to be? Can I represent it visually? And then think about, okay, what note should I have on that slide? Is it just keep it simple? A big arrow, big circle, increase by 25%, etc., etc. Word pictures and metaphors are great. I would say don't have too many of those in your conference speech. If you had like maybe one to describe the overall message, that would be good. And maybe 1 or 2 more. But you don't need to go crazy on the metaphors. But if you have one big idea in a metaphor, then you can use that and interpret it in different ways during the talk. And again, don't sleep on your energy. You want to make sure that you've got the right energy to match the message, the tone of the speech. If it's serious, it's low, it's slow, it's measured. But if it's inspiring, it's upbeat, it's about change, it's about the future, it's about optimism, then you've got to not only live it, but you've got to show it. You've got to show people that you're optimistic. Again, intellectual people feel, well, why don't I just say it? It feels fake if I'm performing. And I understand it's not always natural at the beginning to sort of be an 8 or a 9 out of 10, but you've got to get there. If you want to be a successful conference speaker, yeah, sure. You don't want to go up there and just speak in your natural speaking voice at a 5 out of 10. It's going to be very dull. It's going to be very flat. It might be fine if we're one-on-one, but not in front of a conference stage with hundreds or thousands of people. You've got to dial it up at least to a 7. And then, make it yours, right? Find ways. Maybe there's certain parts of the presentation you get excited about. This is a great, time to record your presentation. Listen to the parts where you naturally get excited. You naturally start putting some energy in. Maybe you're telling a story, or you're talking about a client, or you're giving an example, or whatever it is. You will find that you will naturally have some higher energy. You're like, that's where I'm getting a bit more energy. Let's lean into that. Let me make sure that for at least this 5 minutes here, I'm really dialing it up because I'm doing it naturally anyway. So you need to have that awareness, work with a colleague, with a family member, work with a coach to identify those parts that you already are quite strong at. You can start from there and then build on. You don't have to totally, become a, Steve Jobs or a top level speaker overnight. So think about, these 5 points here. Maybe you want to start with one of them, try and apply it into your next presentation. Start, in a business presentation, in a meeting presentation in front of 5 people or 15 people, to, give it a try before you bring it to the stage. Ultimately, like a movie, the stage presentation, the conference speech should be the result of many, many edits, many, many rehearsals, many, many makeovers to get to that final product. If you think about all the stills and the recordings and all the recording that is done to make a movie and the scripts and all the workarounds and edits, that's the same thing you need to have for a successful conference speech. People just don't put a deck together and then stand up and start delivering it. It's really a creative process. So just amplifying your message here, refine that core message, elevate your visuals. Again, just start improving one thing. I'm always a big believer in incremental change, building in that habit. So look at your deck, say, okay, what one visual can I change? Look at your headlines, say, okay, how can I improve this message? Can I get it to 6, 4, 6, 8 words? Where can I dial up that energy on my delivery? So really apply these ideas just one at a time, and over time you'll get a lot better. That was the end of our speech on visual communication. Lots of suggestions there. Go back, have a look at those suggestions, pick one, and start putting it into your presentation today. If you are ready to work with a coach, to play a bigger game, to have a bigger impact, this is what I do. I help people really dial up their conference speeches. We'll work on the script, on the deck, on the visuals, on the message, on the story, on the whole package, how to be on the stage delivering it. Book a personal consultation with me. There's a QR code on the screen. Scan that in to book a call. I really enjoy hearing your stories. I really love helping people get their message out to help you, really fine tune your speaking voice and to make a big impact in the conference speeches. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the presentation today. We've got 2 more sessions in this series to come. So I hope you'll be able to join the ones next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.